call an abuse of authority. And you had talked about getting rid of the bad politicians and putting them in with good. I think a lot of these guys actually go up there with good intentions, and they start off with pure hearts. But this system, this political system we have right now, is one of the most corrupting environments I've ever been in my life. And part of what's going on here, frankly, is an element of that corruption. We divided ourselves in this Republican Party into kind of two different camps. There's fraternity Republicans and there's platform Republicans. Fraternity Republicans essentially kiss the pinky ring of the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker, right? Platform Republicans remember who put them in office, right? Yeah. And the latest kerfuffle, I guess, I had with the Senate Majority Leader, it came in the wake, ostensibly, of the wake of attending a Right to Life banquet, and I had the audacity of sitting down at a table in his district talking to people at a Right to Life banquet, and he came to me afterwards in Senate session and said that it was mighty disrespectful of you to go there without notifying me that you would be at that banquet. And I proceeded to say, well, let's talk about respect. Let's talk about what's happening with chairmanships. Let's talk about what's happening with bills that are being held up that are perfectly good, that are being held up because of political reasons. Let's talk about that. And he said, are you being insubordinate? And I go, insubordinate, really? Newsflash, I don't work for you, I work for the citizens of Michigan. If you want to understand where this comes from, I've never said a cross word to him. I mean, that's pretty point blank, that's saying what's going on, but there are people that believe that this is a fraternity. I mean, you can tell with the votes that are going on. There's a lot of people doing safe votes, so they count up to see how many people can take a safe vote so that they can, not have to worry about anything in their next election, and then they count them up, and then they go move the legislation once they've covered all the quote-unquote vulnerables, instead of voting on principle and voting on the basis of what you said you would do for your voters. So there's a little bit different approach on service. When I came up there, I came out of the Tea Party, as many of you guys know. I was sick and tired of this politics as usual. I wanted to make sure we had somebody, when they wrote that they were going to be opposing tax increases, that they'd actually oppose tax increases. But why, with a supermajority of Republicans in the Senate, why with a majority of Republicans in the House and a Republican governor, did we pass Medicaid expansion, which is Obamacare, Section 2001 of Obamacare? Why did we pass a gas tax increase when there are alternatives were out there that they didn't even want to give the time of day to? I had to actually challenge my colleagues to debate to actually even get it into the limelight on it. Why did we pass a senior pension tax? It's because they go in, some of these guys, they go in with good intentions, but then they feel like the only way that they're going to get reelected or go to their next step up the ladder is if they kiss the pinky ring of the Senate Majority Leader. Now, I will tell you that Senate Majority Leader controls which bills go through. They essentially dictatorial powers in the Senate, as you can see with what happened here. I frankly think it was an abuse of authority, and that's what it came down to. Now you'll hear, and I'm going to try to convey what I've been told is the reason for this issue with the committee assignments, but I'm also going to share a little bit of history on how we got to this point, because it's not just this latest committee assignment. Many of you guys may recall that I'm the only senator that returned from my first term and was not assigned any chairmanships. Now, I was a chairmanship. I was actually on the leadership team my freshman year, or my freshman term, my first term, back in 2011. I was the chair of the State Police and Department of Military and Veterans Affairs budget. And frankly, we did a very, very good job in that capacity. In State Police, we had 4 out of the top 10 crime cities when I started. We're down to 1 out of top 10 by the time I was done. We had 10,000 rape kits at the beginning that were handed over to us from Detroit because they closed their crime lab. By the time, that's a lot of rape kits that have to get processed, and we were down to 0 by the time I was done. All right, it's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. Thank you very much for your service, sir. Michigan. I was a freedom fighter. I was co-founder of that at the Detroit Metro, but we were pretty much dead last in regards to veteran service quality here in the state of Michigan. By the time I was done, we were number 2 in the nation. Wow. And that was just 4 years. So, against that backdrop, I found out via a tweet from Chad Livengood at the time he was with the Detroit News that said that Colbeck was snubbed as the only person returning had no chairmanships. Actually, the only Republican senator without any chairmanships. And so I texted Senator Meekhof. I said, "Is that true?" And he goes, "Yeah, you didn't earn it." Really? So I said, well, I'm not going to go talk to the press on this. I'm going to go sit down with them. find out what's really going on here. That literally never had a crossword with him. We've been working together on a lot of different pieces of legislation, including right to work. And I was very curious as to what was going on. I even voted for him for Senate Majority. And when I sat down with him, he proceeded to give me 4 reasons why I was not provided any chairmanships. Number 1, I was too vocal in my opposition to Medicaid expansion. Number 2, I was too vocal in my opposition to Common Core standards. Number 3, I underperformed in my district. It was supposed to be like a 7 or 8% district, and I only got 5% of the vote. Because I was, by the way, just, you know, as the one who led right to work in Michigan, I was targeted by the National Democratic Party, not just the State Democratic Party, in Wayne County, birthplace of the UAW. So, sorry about that, but we're supposed, it goes with its challenges, right? But that doesn't mean you're not supposed to be bold and lead with bold policies. The last one that he said was that I need to talk at more of an 8th grade level with my colleagues. So, I don't know if that's So, anywho, so that's the first step on all this. And ultimately, I mean, let's just put it this way. I was encouraged to, during my reelection, to go off and vote for the gas tax increase. And I was told that I would have a lot more friends in the next term if I would vote for that gas tax increase. And I said, you know, I'll take my chances. And this is the way it works. It's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of stuff. Meanwhile, nobody's scratching the back of the people that put them into office.
Right.
And it ticks me off. And so I'm not going to be apologetic about that. And so when it comes down to what happened recently here on the committee assignments, well, frankly, the timing on it was kind of interesting because it came right on the heels of the Meekhof GOP leadership conference. It was about a couple weeks after, I think. And we made a pretty dang strong showing. We surprised the heck of a lot of the folks that you would characterize as the establishment up there. We got 18% of the vote, and that was with 150 of the people that were with us at our event that couldn't vote because they were not registered at the conference. They just came up to support us. And there's a lot of other folks that frankly didn't want to cast a vote in a straw poll that was up there because they knew it was just a data mining activity that was going on. They didn't want to put their information on there. So we have a lot of Fourth Amendment advocates on our team. So I think we scared the heck out of him. And I think it was his attempt to just silence the voice. When you've taken out a committee, you don't have a chance to chime in on legislation that's out there. You don't get into MERS, which is the Inside the Beltway press that's out there. You don't get into gong work. They don't quote you. MLive doesn't talk to you at all anymore. So committees where all the down and dirty stuff really is supposed to happen. So I think, especially in context of what his reasons were for me not getting any chairmanship, saying I was too vocal in opposition to things that were being promoted by Republicans that weren't consistent with the Republican platform, I think that was an attempt to silence me. Now, the story that's coming out through whisper campaigns and through his office is a little bit different. How many of you guys have heard that I violated caucus rules? All right? Do me a favor. Next time somebody tells you that, ask them what caucus rule I violated. I've got the caucus rules. Matter of fact, here's something interesting. They just recently changed the caucus rules so you can't talk about the caucus rules right now. Now, I probably technically violated the caucus rule by telling you that there's a caucus rule that says you can't talk about the caucus rules. But anyway, just to show you what kind of games are being played on this. And obviously, I'm not afraid to talk truth to power because I'm not up there to serve them. I'm up there to serve you. That's a much different perspective. And good thing is we got some guys in the House that are in that mode of operation as well. So, comes on the heels of that GOP leadership conference. They said I violated caucus rules. The other rumor is, right, that they'll go off and spread is that they had to put $750,000 into a quote-unquote safe seat. How many of you guys have heard that? Right? Well, that goes back into the discussion over bold leadership. What happens when you take on policy challenges like right to work? Well, you know, you're going to have challenges. All right? And so I'm telling you, the stuff that's out there, they just prefer to do it in a whisper campaign. I've got my colleagues, unfortunately, they know what happens if they speak out, right? They go off and speak out, what happens to them? What happens to their bills? They find them their way into government operations, which is the land of misfit toys that never comes out of there. Right? It's all intimidation, and I.
Using you as an example.
What's that?
They're using you as an example.
They're trying.
So the others don't.
Exactly, and it's like keep in line, or else what happened to Colbeck's going to happen to you. Now, some of these guys, they know that their pathway to getting donations is a good word from the Senate Majority Leader, right? Or the next leadership that's trying to saddle up to the Senate Majority Leader, if you will. A lot of people are going off another statement that's out there saying, oh, Colbeck's only telling you a pinhole of what's happening. I'm telling you everything I know of that's going on here. There's a full spotlight on it. If I'm missing something, then nobody's told me what it is. And so it gets a little frustrating. But if you wonder, for me, this is about more than committee assignments. This is about how we're intended to operate and how we're intended to serve as elected officials. So, you know, we've had the Wayne 11th has passed a resolution in support of kind of admonishing the Senate Majority Leader. The 11th Congressional District has a proposal out there as well. The 7th Congressional District had one as well. It was shot down by the former Senate Majority Leader's mom, Randy Richardville's mom. So there's a push out there, but the reason why these are being done, I'm not orchestrating them. People are standing up because really what they're trying to do is silence your voice. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's unique to me. All the stuff that I'm talking about is the stuff that everybody here, everybody out there was saying that that's why we want you to go up in office, is to get rid of Obamacare, to go off and keep taxes in line, and this Common Core, you know, Fed government shouldn't have anything to do with our state education, right?
Right.
That's right.
So all I'm doing is reflecting, just like Trump's doing a great job of reflecting what we said for him to go off and do, that's all I'm doing here. And so when we talk about standing up to what's going on here, it's really a case of saying this abuse of authority is not acceptable. And if we keep wondering why we keep doing the same thing and keep getting the same results, and I mean, this is an opportunity. This is a little bit of a litmus test from my perspective. If we're staying silent, we're saying, okay, but we can just, that behavior is okay. It's not a big deal. And we just move on to our daily lives. But frankly, from my perspective, I haven't been fanning the flames at all. When I'm asked to talk about it, I'll talk about it. But for me, this is everything that's wrong with government. And I'm here to, but I'm not afraid of that kind of stuff. And if you guys got any questions on it, I'd be glad to answer it. And then if you want, if we got time, we can talk a little bit about this whole governor's race if you guys would like. But in regards to this whole Senate committee thing, by the way, I should also point out they've already backfilled me on all these committees. So there's already people assigned in those committees now. So it's not like it's waiting and an opening for me to come back in there. They've already filled it up. I'm still getting bills moved and passed, not because of you know, being able to play off one committee versus another. Obviously, it's actually on the merit of the bill. So, and we've got we work other channels to go off and get this stuff done. And I've got a lot of friends over in the House as well. Yeah, question, Jody?
So how, I guess my question is, how do we stop this? Because it is weird, we can't even get that DTE bill 4220 through, and it's a great bill. And
Yeah.
so how do we stop that? How do we stop it? What happened to you? Because it is kind of not a republic where you all are equal. We have got a pecking order.
We gotta somehow send a message that says this behavior is not acceptable from the grassroots. Precinct delegates, as we're talking about, are a very powerful group. They don't impact all the elections, obviously. They impact Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, the Supreme Court justices. But you can make your voices heard there. You can also make your voices heard on the platform in that context. You can even have a no corruption plank added to the platform talking about abuse of authority in this capacity. So that is another possibility. But ultimately, this is everything I ran for office against. And so if you guys are in similar ilk, I mean, that's kind of, it's time to stand up. I can't stand up any more than I have stood up on this, right? I stand up any further and the scimitar's coming right across the neck, so, yeah.
I've discovered over the last 10 or 15 years anyways, that not enough people are willing to stand up and voice their opinions, or even write a letter. I've been known to call members of Congress in other states, and in 2004,
Attention library patrons.
I
We'll be closing in 30 minutes.
actually called
Need a ride?
Duncan
Please
Hunter's
seek the
office.
librarian to
Now, his
call
son
for a
is in
ride
that
home.
seat now, but
We will
he
be
was a
closing the doors
Republican.
promptly at 9
And
p.m.
his staffer
Thank
told
you.
me that when they get a letter, even a 1 or 2 paragraph letter, intelligently
Yeah.
from somebody, they think 100 other people think the same thing.
Yeah.
There are too many people who are not willing to take the time to make a call or write a letter, because it's the lobbyists that are there. That's what they hear. And when people start to actually speak up, they'll start hearing.
Well, I've got 2 more suggestions in that, in the book that I'm writing, so we'll get that out here.
Yeah, and all you did is a form letter.
No, but the
They don't
point,
even answer the
but the-
question that you're wrong about.
the point,
Take
the
the
point,
form letter that's
that says,
repeated
"Oh, thank you
often
for
and
your-"
often, I mean, that
But-
doesn't get as
but-
much bang as
but-
a personally written.
but the
I've
point,
written
the,
many letters, and all I get is a form
the
letter.
point is, there are not enough people doing this. That's the
Okay.
problem. If they
Yeah.
get a lot of people calling on a particular, I guarantee if enough people were calling on a regular basis or writing a letter, they'd start getting the idea that people actually
Can I ask you
care.
another quick question about Mr. Meekhof though? So,
Ultimately, you have to go after the purse strings to really get their attention.
Oh, absolutely.
I hate to say it.
so what about Mr. Meekhof though? Do you think he'll, because I'm part of the Unity Committee
Yeah.
at the state party, and we are talking about it next week. And
Unity
so,
idea submission, right?
Pardon?
No, sorry.
well, I guess this, do you think he'll, he'll give his side of the story, or he's okay with the way he's
He's,
totally okay with it?
high on the hog, he's just scrubbing around like a peacock right now. I don't think that
He's
that's.
high
not
on
worried at
power.
all.
I think, real quick, I think everything that he's saying right now validates everything I've said for the past 4 or 5 years, and probably 10 years that I've been involved in this party. And it comes down to a separation between people that come into this process because they care about issues, or people that come into this process because they want to be a part of a party. Because there's a disconnect there. And so I think if you stay active as activists and do the things that we've taught you to do in the classes that we put on, and organize your communities, and you organize your neighborhood, starting with your street, whatever, and stay on these guys, keep their feet to the fire, then we don't have as many Meekhofs in the world, and we have more Pat Colbecks in the world. And I think that's, I think it validates everything I've said. And really in particular, when you talk about party politics, it's not that we're against the Republican Party or against the Democrat, but it's not the party. These people run for office and they borrow our banner. They're not necessarily Republican or Democrat. They just some of them just go like this and they figure, how can I get easily elected? I'll sign up and become a Republican.
Right.
And sometimes they do that. And so our party is fine. Our values are fine. It's just that these guys, not Pat, but some of these guys, they run for the wrong reasons and they misrepresent our party. So when you think you're going up against a Republican and you have this pride factor in your mind that, oh my God, I can't speak out against Pat if he does anything wrong, he's a Republican. I'm a Republican. Wrong. He's a public servant. So we've got to be able to make that distinction between party and public servants. And I think if you're willing to hold their feet to the fire, if you're willing to organize, if you're willing to do the things that we should be doing in a representative republic, then this downslide of corruption can slow down. But Pat does make a good point. Stopping the money, stopping the purse strings, that's a big challenge. And I don't have all the answers. I don't know if you have an answer there.
Well, I do talk about it in the book, but one thing I want to point out, whenever I oppose a policy, I hit both barrels on the policy, but I don't get personal. And I think that's important, because when you get personal, people dig in their heels pretty dang stiffly, if you will. And you can't bring them to any, once you hurt their pride or hurt their image or whatever the case may be, they're not going to support you in anything else. I still got good relationships with pretty much everybody in the caucus, except for the Senate Majority Leader. That gets a little frustrating. But I want to point out too, I was very deliberate in my use of the differentiation between fraternity Republicans and platform Republicans, because I think that's the key distinction. There's a lot of people who've been in the party for a long time, and they're proud of the platform that we have, and they are focused on trying to make sure that we uphold that platform, and that's laudable. So just because somebody's been in politics for a long time doesn't mean that they're working against the system. In some respects, as somebody relatively new to politics, I appreciate the fact that they've been in the fight while I've been, pursuing other endeavors at the time. So just a word of appreciation, if you would, on it, because I mean, there are folks that are really trying to do the right thing, been fighting a good fight for a while, and just because of longevity, I don't necessarily want to give my ding, if you know what I mean. It fundamentally comes down to, who do you owe your allegiance to? Do you owe your allegiance to something higher than the Senate Majority Leader, the Speaker, or the Governor? I mean, or is that where it stops? You just go off and follow the breadcrumbs of money, and so that you can ensure your own security. I've taken penalties, obviously, for I believe what I think is the right thing. So either I'm totally deluding myself on why I'm doing this, but there's a reason I'm running for governor, is because there's essentially 3 power positions in this government right now. It's the Senate Majority Leader, Speaker, and the Governor. And if you're going to make a change, you're going to affect change in the state, you have to have one of those seats. This is not my favorite job, as you can probably tell. But you know what ticks me off even more? Somebody who really likes this as their favorite job, serving there and doing anything that they can in order to get that job. And that's what keeps me going on this, to go off and say, no, that's not the type of people who want to serve us.
Yeah, well, you mentioned about, the grassroots, and we are a party that has a convention in August. Supposedly it's the grassroots that are running the show, okay? Is there any push?
Yeah, what did I tell you about some
I know, well,
gubernatorial debates?
I realize that that's a little bit, what they want us to think. But
No, it's not too bad, though.
in the state committee, we can have things put on the agenda, including resolutions.
Yeah.
Is there a resolution, is it worth pushing for a resolution at that convention that could address this issue? Or has it already been discussed in the state committee and it's a non-starter? What can we do to help, in other words?
Yeah, there's a model resolution that Wayne Levin put out. I mean, to tell you the truth on all the wording and everything, I've tried to say as decoupled from that activity as possible.
Okay,
So
I understand you're not, but would it help? Would it help?
I think sending a clear message that we are not the party of silencing dissenting views on policy. I mean, that's important for me. I mean, especially when those dissenting views are actually in line with what the precinct delegates said via our platform, right?
I'm buying you a megaphone,
Yeah.
okay?
All right.
So you can be as low and loud as you can, 'cause that's, I know your background for Tea
Yeah.
Party. I was,
Yeah.
part with it, how that happened.
Yeah.
And that was the whole purpose of sending people like you to not have this happen. And it's very dismaying to know that it's still happening, even when we're the majority party, and a lot of that is because of the grassroots Tea Party effort.
Yeah.
Okay?
I know.
We're making difference, but obviously, just
That's
like
where
it is
the
in
energy is in
Washington,
the party right
it's
now.
not enough, obviously. We
Yeah.
know it's not enough. So would it be helpful, you're running for governor,
I think
would
so.
it be helpful to do that as well? Because you're also gonna be on the ballot,
Anything you
right?
can do to get state committee's attention on this stuff, talking about how we're supposed to conduct
So
ourselves while
state
we're in
committee
office,
people, you're listening, right?
would be
Dave
appreciated.
and Jody
Yeah.
and Tim
Yeah.
and,
Are you allowed to attend these committees that you're not a member of? Or are they private?
I don't know, I can't take away any more committees.
You know what I mean? Are you allowed to sit in on them and know what they're doing?
Oh, yeah, I can sit in on them. That's fine. I mean, I can monitor them too from my office. I can watch Senate TV and see some of the committees as well. So I'm still engaged.
I didn't know if they're private and only the committee members know what goes on in them.
No, I've already testified before some of these committees already, so it's not like I'm being a stranger at all to any of this stuff, and I'm still moving
Check out to the
legislation.
circulation desk at this
So,
time.
Yeah, real quick, we got
We'll be
about
shutting down
20
the
minutes,
computers in
in
10
the
minutes.
library, we've gotta be
Thank you.
out at 9.
right, so it
I'm
means
gonna
if
give
you,
us
you
about
want
10
treats,
minutes.
we have to have treats real soon, okay, just so you know.
Yes, please
So
eat them.
eat the
I'll-
treats
we'll
and we
pass
can
these
still
out.
have questions.
Do you
Pass
wanna
around.
spend- do you
We're
wanna
talking about
spend
the
some time
governor?
talking
Yeah,
about
we'll talk
governor?
about the governor.
Pass these
around.
You just had the
And thank you
debate.
for
First off-
Investigatus.
how many of you guys have seen one of the town halls? All right?
No, thank you.
So, rather than me say what's going on at these town halls, what do you guys think is happening at the town halls? I mean, Because I'm telling you right now, this town hall, by the way, Stan was talking about gimmickry, being accused of gimmickry. I've been accused of gimmickry because I had the audacity of actually wanting to work with some of the other gubernatorial candidates and actually interview for our job. So I think that's the way to go off and do it. I've worked with Lieutenant Governor. I actually encouraged us to reach out to Dr. Hines, so Dr. Hines is in the mix as well. And frankly, there's going to be 4 people on the ballot. There's a couple other candidates that filed articles of organization, but they're never going to be on the ballot because it's tough to get on the ballot, as Bob knows. By the way, we're the only campaign that got on the ballot, 100% grassroots effort. And so we didn't pay mailers saying, please send me back a petition. We didn't pay professional signature gatherers like a certain attorney general who is having the same guys solicit petition signatures for Shreve Anadar and Attorney General Bill Schuette at the same time. So very interesting stuff. But so we've got our strength of our campaign is the grassroots. It's frankly name recognition is the only thing holding us back at this point in time. If more people need to know the fact that we've been out there providing principled service for years, and it hasn't been easy on us. And but that's what people are looking for. And going forward as governor, we've got a series of principled solutions to fixing our roads, for health care, for education, across the board, getting rid of the personal income tax. And I've actually got a tangible plan to go out and do that. Those are the stuff I want to start talking about, and you talk about them in context of your town hall. So what's your big takeaway from the town hall since you've been here?
The little bit that I watched, I was able to watch it just, and I was focused on you because I vote for you.
Yeah.
But it was like you seem to have an answer for everything that the state is illing. I didn't really see so much out of the other candidates.
Yeah.
It was just more of the same stuff.
I'm
You
kind of
had
what's known
more-
as a policy wonk. So
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
to get into different areas and analyze.
But you had more of, this is what I want to, it was like, this is what I want to do, or this is what we can do, as opposed to just, I noticed a little bit of shuffle on a couple of the other candidates.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now, you guys know who the so-called Truth Squad is? The Bridge Magazine? They're just a hatchet job. Well, they're going off now because I actually quote numbers. Now they want none of the other guys quote any number, they just put out platitudes.
Yep.
But they're gonna come out and start saying, well, Colbeck, claimed that right to work, it's like, all this stuff, they're deliberate hatchet jobs, and they're gonna go off and play games with some of the numbers, because you talk to 10 different economists, you're gonna get 10 different numbers.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be kinda interesting how that happens, but I appreciate, that's what we're trying to do, is focus on solutions. I think people are tired of saying, we need more money for roads, that's what's holding us back, right? Just go fix the damn thing.
I have a statement. Campaign donations are an important part of him getting on the ballot
Yeah.
too. So we need to send money to his campaign. And I have a question about the meter. Callie said that they weren't cutting off people's power, and that's not true.
That's not true.
I know
Yeah.
people
They're actually cutting off
personally-
power to seniors, which is explicitly against the law.
That's right, that's right. I know people
19
personally
days.
who have had their power cut off, and other people who are getting threatened, and they're allowing the new meter because they're threatening that their power is gonna get cut off.
Yeah, I got good news on that front. MPSC, Michigan Public Service Commission, is actually starting to serve the public. Because of the pressure we put on them, and also Representative Glenn has had some hearings on it, but literally, we've gone off and taken the extraordinary step of actually attending their Public Service Commission, which never happens. Elected officials never go to this, like they never go to the State Board of Education or anything. And we've sent some very strongly worded letters to them saying, you guys are supposed to be serving the best interests of the public. They got a virtual monopoly over here. They don't have a voice. The consumers don't have a voice. We're supposed to be their voice, and we've got to start acting like it. So it actually is starting to make some inroads, because they're going to get audited now. And they're going to be audited against exactly that. Who are they shutting down, and why are they shutting them down? And now all of a sudden, they're kind of stepping up their game a little bit. We'll see how far it goes, but that is a big deal. We're making progress.
Real quick,
Yeah.
getting back to the current stuff, legislative
Yeah.
stuff. We had a brief interaction on social media about the budget.
Yeah.
As I read it, the budget increased.
Yeah.
What was
Meaning the governor's budget
Yeah,
proposal?
yeah.
Yeah, the governor, he's increased, but not as much as he has in the past, I mean, I'll grant him that. I mean, we were averaging 3 to 5% every year. When I started, our budget was 46.8. The last budget we passed out was 56.6. With supplementals, I think it's up to 57.3 or something like that. So, there's a discussion on it. Hey, by the way, I got some good news to talk about today. We actually passed the first tax decrease today.
Not what I did.
Yes, both houses?
Yeah, it came back from, if I remember correctly, it came back from the House under messages from the House. So yeah, that means, so we actually increased the personal exemption. So frankly, if you eliminate the state personal income tax, that doesn't matter. But it's a start.
Two quick things too. I've been personally reading up on direct primary care.
Yeah.
And watching some seminars on it, mostly out of state. It's really interesting. I really like the potential, and I know you've been talking about that for a long time, so I encourage all of you to look that up. But as well, getting back to smart meters real quick, it's come to my attention that some of the reason why it's not making it out of the House committee is because the committees are disproportionately stacked with representatives from districts that have a lot of lobbyist money coming in from the big energy companies, and I wonder if there's some truth to that.
Representative Glenn picked people for that committee specifically that would be friendly on that, or at least, and so what happens, just like we said before, I mean, people go in there with good intentions. Some of these guys that are out there were like rah system on energy choice, and then next thing you know, they had a lot of visits with a certain lobbying firm, and they change their mind, or they get squishy. So it is very rare somebody goes up there and sticks to their guns all the way through, because they're convinced that the only way you're going to win is with a certain amount of money. That's how they judge all these elections. It's all based on bank balances.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that's true. If you got to put lipstick on a pig, it's very expensive for all that lipstick, right? Right? But there's a lot of cases where you can run a principled campaign. We're doing that right now in our governor's race, where we're going to win without millions of dollars in the bank. We're going to have enough to go off and get it across the finish line. But you have to have a certain confidence. You have to actually have a good principled record. You got to have the right candidate in order to get that across the finish line. And a lot of folks, the money is the easy button. And that's, a lot of the media is going to focus on money because they want the candidate with the most money, because then they can put in the most ad buys, which means that they get more revenue, right?
Yep.
So you're going to have a nice little positive feedback loop on them in that regard. I mean, we're paying our bills, we're getting things done, we're getting yard signs out, all the stuff for a grassroots campaign, but they're still only looking at the money. And so these people are convinced that the only way they're ever going to win an election is if they have sufficient amount of money in the bank in order to win it. And that's one way of winning it, but that's not the only way. And I've already proven that in my first election, and we'll prove it again. Yeah, Trump didn't spend much, but he had a little thing called name recognition.
Yeah, a little bit.
So that's actually, if you guys want to help out with our